Hello and welcome to Lightcast Webinars. Really great that you could join us today. We're very excited to be joined by Lightcast's Executive VP of Global Operations, Andy Derman, and Alina Magrini, who is the Head of Global Research for Lightcast. If you have any questions during the course of the webinar, please put them in the questions box on your control panel, and we will endeavour to get to those at the end of the presentation. If not, we will respond to you as part of the follow-up email. This follow-up email will be shared with recordings and slides from today's webinar, so keep your eyes open for that. So without any further ado, hello, and I'll hand over to you, Andy.
Thank you, Debbie. Hello, and hello everyone there. Happy New Year. I think this is the first one since the turn of the year, so Happy New Year, everyone, even though we are the last day of January already, and I don't know where my life is disappearing to. But thanks for joining us. Welcome, and great to have Eleanor joining us as well. We'll introduce Eleanor shortly as we get into the topic today. So yes, welcome. And as always, for those that have been part of this webinar series now for a good number of years in various guises, welcome back. It's great to have you joining us. We do know we have a lot of people who keep up to speed with what we've got going on through this vehicle. And if you are new to us, thank you very much. You're very welcome to join our tribe. And just a little bit about our mission, because it's important, I think, to understand where we're coming from as we bring this content and other content to you, to help you understand why we do what we do. And really the big thing is that we as an organization right around the world are motivated to help unlock new possibilities in the labor market. And we can't just do that alone, but as an individual organization, we do this through working with organizations just like yours, and in many cases exactly like yours, because you're part of our customer group, who are working at the front line of driving forward the response to changes and challenges in the labor market and unlocking those opportunities and new possibilities, whether that through the world of education and skills development, or regional economic planning, or indeed as employers recruiting and evolving workforces and planning workforce activities. So thank you very much for your work, and you enable us to help us fulfill our mission through your great work. And we do this. How do we do that? Well, we are a labor market data organization, because our perspective here is that to really be able to unlock new possibilities, we first have to understand what those possibilities might be, the challenges that are driving it, and the opportunities that are driving it. And so through our labor market intelligence, we want to illuminate what is actually happening in the labor market. And we do this through various dimensions. The first one is looking at official statistics that really help us understand the stock of labor and how that's changing in given localities. And then we dive into really exciting big data sets, job postings, and professional profiles to really dive into the weeds and contextualize those trends and understand the minutiae of data in terms of what's driving employment opportunity and challenge. And we'll talk a bit more about that as we get into today's topic. As a data provider, the data is the product, but there are different ways in which you can engage that, whether that through our software, SaaS platforms, or data integrations via API and Snowflake, but also the research that we can undertake with our experts, including Eleanor and her team, to really help you answer key questions that you're facing as well. So that's a little bit about us. Let's come on to today's topic then. And 2023 has been labeled very much the European Year of Skills. So we're hooking onto that. Now, of course, we have a global audience, and we know that skills and skills evolution is not just a European challenge and opportunity. This is a global thing. So we're hooking onto the interesting discussion that's happening right across the European Union, led very much from the top in the president setting this forth for the year. And the European Year of Skills really reflects, I think, a lot of what a lot of people are thinking about, which is about how we drive opportunity for individuals and communities to access what is a complex, fast-moving world of work and employment. And so, it really is right up our street. Our job is to provide the understanding and the insight that can feed into a lot of the great activity that's going to be going on. So we'll be excited through the coming year to hook back into the 2023 European Year of Skills. And it has a particular focus on the green and digital transitions within economies, which again we know is a common topic throughout. So we'll be using this as a framework as we share our views on some of the topics and illuminate some of the trends that we're seeing from our own data. And I think this is the perfect opportunity to bring Eleanor into the conversation. Hello, Eleanor.
Hi, Andy.
Good to have you. So today, as we kick off this sort of annual topic for 2023, we're going to sort of just go into the basics a little bit and build on previous webinars where we're really going to try and talk a little bit more about how we identify skills in the labour market here at Lightcast, and start to share a few of these trends as we start to pursue some of the topics that the Year of Skills is illuminating. So to kick us off then, tell us a little bit about how we look for skills in the labour market before then taking us through some of the interesting insights that you'll want to share with us today.
Thanks, Andy. I think it's good to pause for a moment to try and understand and identify how we define skills needs, because skills is a buzzword that we hear a lot and is top of the agenda for many policymakers, both at the national, international, and also local level. But how can we capture skills insights and where do we find them? You described our data earlier in terms of the official statistics that we use in the job postings, in the profiles, and when we try to understand what kind of skills employers are currently looking for from candidates, the data set that we use for this type of analysis is job postings insights. Why do we need job postings inside? Why are they useful? Well, first of all, we know that there are millions of online job postings that are posted every day in the labor market across the globe. By gathering and harvesting all this data together, we can get unique insights on the specific skills that employers are requiring in a way that is not available through official statistics, because official statistics are really good in giving us an overview of what's happening in the labor market, but they tend to lag a little bit behind, whereas instead with the job postings, we can see almost in real time what employers are asking. So that's good on that side, but there are millions and millions and millions of job postings out there. So we need to do a lot of work in terms of classifying, categorizing, and filtering these job postings in order to get some meaningful insights from this type of data. And alongside initial cleaning of the data to ensure that we only have one unique posting for each advert that is put out, we also need some taxonomy, some common language that help us categorize and filter the kind of skills and information that employer put in these job postings. And so in order to get some skills insights, we need a combination of this big data set, but also some categorization of this data set in terms of taxonomies. Now, in terms of taxonomies, there are many different ways to approach this. And we know, for example, we were talking about the European Union earlier. European Union has a skills classification, ESCO, which is a way to classify skills being demanded by employers. But there's more than that, and different countries have very different taxonomies. And so we have created a Lightcast open taxonomy, as you can see on the next slide, that basically tries to capture and covers all the different skills that are being required by employers in the labor market at a global level. So it's a taxonomy that can be applied in the UK in the same way that can be applied in Europe, in Australia, in the US. And what is this taxonomy made of? So we have 32,000 skills, over 32,000 skills captured by this taxonomy. It's a very granular classification because the way employers talk about skills is very different, changes from one occupation to another, from a sector to another, and also it is regularly updated. And this is a key point of the taxonomy because we know that the labor market is changing very fast. and that some of the skills that we're thinking of today might not be as relevant in a year's time, and some new skills that we didn't even think about today will be emerging. And the fact that this taxonomy is regularly updated means that we can capture the new skills as soon as they come into the labor market, as soon as employers talk about them. And then with all these skills that we have collected, we try to do some sort of categorization to make it more make sense, because obviously it's a bit hard to try and capture insights for over 32,000 skills and talk about all of them in a meaningful way. So we have a broad way to categorize skills into 3 categories. First of all, we have common skills, which are the most general transferable skills that employers often talk about, things like communication, management, problem-solving skills. Then we have a second category that is specialized skills, and these are the skills that are more specifically linked to specific occupations and to specific industries, and these are the ones that varies the most from one job to the other. And then we have a third category, which is digital/software skills, which is basically all the specific tools, digital tools that people need in order to carry out their jobs that employers are talking about in the job postings. And then beyond these 3 broad categories, we also have a hierarchical organization of the taxonomy, which is around 32 macro categories that kind of like group together all the different specific skills, and then 400 subcategories that goes a little bit into the detail of all the different skills categories. And I mean, if you click on the link in the presentation when we share it afterwards, you can actually go on our website and see how the whole taxonomy is organized, and how all the different skills fits together. But this is basically all to say, this is the way in which we try to capture skills in our analysis, which then leads nicely, I think, to what comes next in the presentation in terms of, okay, you now told us how you capture skills, but what skills are we talking about here? When we're thinking about the European Year of Skills, obviously there is a focus on green and there is a focus on digital, but there are plenty other skills that employers are asking and requiring in the labor market beyond those 2. And so here on these slides, you can see the top 10 common and specialized skills that we see in the job postings from 10 of our European countries. And the 10 countries in questions are Austria, Belgium, France, Germany, Great Britain, Ireland, Italy, the Netherlands, and Spain and Switzerland. So we collected all the data for all these different countries, and by bringing it all together, we try to see what are the skills that most frequently come up when employers talk about jobs online. And what we see here is that management and communications are the 2 common skills that are most often cited by employers when they're recruiting for positions. Other things that are particularly important, you can see there is sales, there's planning, English language come up as important, packages like Microsoft Office that are used across different disciplines and different occupations, also quite important, and specifically Excel is being cited as one of the most important skills, as well as customer services, innovation, and also German language is coming up. And then on the other side, the purple graph, what we see are instead the specialized skills that are currently most cited by employers in the labor market. And here we see a broad range of skills. They don't come up very often, but it's not because they're not important, but it's just because there are so many different job postings that cover very different occupations, that when you cover everything at such a holistic level and put everything in one basket, it almost waters down some of the specificity of different jobs, and that is part of the reason why it's really important to look specific geographies and at specific occupations in details. But if we take an overall view, what we see is that accounting, project management, auditing skills are all quite high in demand overall in these 10 European countries in 2022. And so that's for overall, but two things to mention here. One, as I was saying just now, one thing is looking at the labor markets as a whole, so all these different 10 countries all together. But in reality, all these 10 countries have very different labor markets. And actually, within these countries, each local areas has very different labor markets. So the skills needs will probably vary from one place and another. And so here you can see that as an example of this in terms of accounting skills on one side and automation skills on the other side. But then the other things that you can see in this slide is how this is also changing over time. So you see two bars for each country. One represents 2019, the lighter one, and then a darker one that represents 2022, which is the most recent year of data that we got. And here the point is, kind of what we were saying before, the labor market is changing really fast, and the skills that are important today might not be the same skills that were important 10 years ago or even 3 years ago, and the skills that are important today might not even be the skills that will be important tomorrow. So it's really important to track not only how things change from one place to the other, but also how they are changing over time. And so here, if we focused on accounting skills, for example, we see that in a lot of places, the number of job postings citing accounting skills has gone down over time. So that's the case for France, for example, for Italy, for Belgium, for Germany, and also Austria. And in other places instead, the demand for these skills has increased over time. So for example, that's the case for Great Britain and also for the case for Spain. And then instead, when we look at automation, we get a similar but different pictures yet again. So we see some movement also here. We see that in some countries, the demand for these skills has really gone up over time. Think Great Britain, think Italy, Germany, also Austria, but it's not everywhere. So on the other end, if we think about Belgium, the demand for these skills in terms of automation has gone down over the same time period. So this basically is really telling us that if we look at the data at such a macro level, we risk to lose a lot and miss a lot of these nuances that we're seeing in the labor market. And the next slide actually, Andy, go for it.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, just on that point actually. Yeah, the interesting thing, as you say, looking at a slightly macro level, of course, we are diving beneath the European-wide look that we had a look at just a moment ago. But you know, France and Austria really do jump out, as you highlighted, in terms of their relative decline in demand in a 3-year period for postings. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the volume of jobs or even the volume of demand is necessarily going down. They could still be going up. It's just that clearly other parts of the economy are in higher demand and waiting it out. It could well be that there is physically less demand, or it could just be that the share of the overall posting mix in France is changing because there are fast emerging new sectors that are perhaps growing quicker than accounting is. So yeah, the devil is always in the detail, isn't it, in terms of diving in. But what we can see is that the relative demand for accounting type skills in Great Britain and France is significantly a higher share than in Spain or the Netherlands, for example, if we want to compare at that level. Sorry to jump in.
No, that's great, and I think you're totally right. These are all the nuances that need to be unpacked to get a full picture of what is happening in the labor market. And the danger sometimes of looking at the data at so high level is that we're missing all these different details that can lead to quite different policy consequences when applied in practice. And yes, and here we see that even more in detail because these charts, these 4 charts display the top 10 skills that are currently most in demand in 4 of the countries that we were looking at earlier. So we are looking at Germany, Great Britain, Italy, and Spain here. And as we see, the main thing to take away from here is that the top 10 is different in the different places. So the skills that are most in demand in one are not necessarily the skills that are most in demand of another. And that really matters when it comes in terms of understanding the shape of different labor markets, because the skills needs of a place are closely linked to the makeup of the economy of that place and the occupations that are most in demand in that economy. But also at the same time, it really helps us understand what are the commonalities between the different places that can also lead to important policy implication in terms of education provision. And so here, if we look at a little bit in the detail, we can see a few things. First is that there are differences in terms of the skills most in demand. When we look at Germany, for example, we see a lot of skills related to computer science, programming roles, tech roles, suggesting that this play quite an important role in the German labor market as a whole. Then instead, if we move to Great Britain, for example, we see a lot of finance, auditing, accounting kind of skills that are high in demand in the UK British labour market, which kind of relates to or suggests that demand at the moment is very high in terms of financial services activities and occupations. And then we have Italy and Spain that have yet again different types of labor market. The Italian one is a bit of a mix when we look at just at the top 10, because we see a few skills related to tech and computer science, but also things related to marketing, project management, and also finance. And again, then in Spain, we see yet again different picture, which is a mix of all the others. But if I think about, I focus for one moment on the UK, Great Britain here. If I think about the top 10 skills that I see here, they're probably representative of they probably give us a picture of overall the demand in the UK labour market at the moment. But we also know that there are very different specific demands in all the different areas. And so different parts of the UK, but it's the same for Italy, it's the same for Spain or for Germany. They probably all have a very different makeups in terms of the skills most in demand. So all of these kind of give us a broad overview of what's happening in the labor market and in terms of skills at the moment. But I think the main point here is that you need to drill down into something more specific if you want to get very tangible, meaningful insights that can have an impact in terms of policy making and driving change at the local level or among education providers. And so the European Years of Skills has a particular focus on green and digital, and we picked green, well, no, we didn't pick green, we picked digital to actually dive into the details of this a little bit more and trying to understand what demand for digital skills and how is this changing in different places. So first, again, a pause for a moment in terms of what are digital skills. I think we hear a lot about digital skills, but what are they? And they are kind of a broad umbrella of different skills. If we look at what the UNESCO says about digital skills, UNESCO defines digital skills as a whole range of abilities to use a digital device, communication and management application, and all the skills that are necessary to create networks and access information. So it's quite a broad range of skills. And there are three things to keep in mind when we go into the slides about the digital skills, as I'll show you in a second. First, when we think about digital skills nowadays are pretty much needed in every job and field. So if a few years ago we could associate digital skills with IT jobs, this is still the case. IT jobs today still needs digital skills, don't get me wrong, but we see digital skills in many other jobs as well. So it's not something that is niche anymore, but it's something that is we see in many parts of the labor market. Then when drilling down into the digital skills, that's where we start seeing differences. So pretty much most jobs nowadays require digital skills, but the level or the type of digital skills differ from one job to the other. So we see a whole range of digital skills from Microsoft Office and Excel, which is something that probably, well, actually, most of us, if we are on this webinar, are using some sort of basic digital skills to be here, all the way to the programming languages, the Amazon Web Services, and all the more technical things that professions related to ITs or programmers are actually using. So when we looked at our taxonomy, as you remember from my previous slides, we were talking about 32,000 skills overall. Approximately 12,000 of these skills actually are digital skills. And this is quite interesting because while we were doing a bit of research for these projects, so there are so many skills, and yet in the European Union at the moment, 4 in 10 adults lack basic digital skills. So it's quite interesting to see how prevalent and in demand they currently are in the labor market, but also how many people still don't have these skills. So to give you a bit of a sense of how digital skills are playing in the labor market, we're focusing on the UK here. So zooming in into one country specifically to try and see how digital skills are changing over time and what digital skills we're talking about. What we're seeing here is that on the left-hand side in the chart, the gray chart, what we see is that there has been a growing demand for digital skills in the UK over the past, even just the past 4 years. So from 2019 to 2022, you've seen that the share of job postings in the UK labor market that require digital skills has gone from almost 36-37% up to we are at 43% now. So it's gradually increased over time. And when we actually look at the specific digital skills most in demand, is a combination of some of the most ubiquitous, almost basic skills like the ability to use Excel, Microsoft Office, computer literacy in general, and some of the more technical skills, such as the ability to do data analysis, which is something that nowadays we all doing with the computers, but also the ability to use programming languages such as SQL and Java, and more in general automation skills as well, which are closely related to digital skills. So this offer overview of the type of skills that are most in demand in the UK and how this has changed over time. But to my point earlier, the different places actually have different demands even for a similar skill. This map actually shows the share of job postings requiring digital skills in different parts of the UK. And there are 3 places in particular that I'm going to mention in terms of the places that have the highest demand or largest demand for digital skills. And these are 3 local authorities: Westminster, which is in London, so central London location; Manchester, which is another big city in the north of England; and then Bristol. So interesting, first of all, that 3 out of 3 of the places with the highest demand for digital skills are cities, and most of the urban areas have on average a larger share of job postings that require digital skills. And on average, they also tend to have larger number of professional jobs that are carried out in offices, which should link to having digital skills. But also, if we look at the map overall, the other interesting thing that I see when I look at it is how all the coastal areas tend to have a much lower share of job postings that require digital skills. And then again, this again links to the makeup of the different economies of different places and how this affected the demand for digital skills. And I think this links nicely to my next slide, which rather than looking at it from geographical perspective, looks at it from an occupation perspective. And here is a bit messy because there are a lot of dots, but these are all the different occupations that we have in our data set for the UK. And we kind of group them into 4 different groups, looking at the dotted line and in the middle of the scatter plot. What you see in the very top right corner are occupations that have a large share of job postings that are requiring digital skills and also have a very high volume of demand of job postings. And here you see programmers, IT business analysts, but also management consultants and business analysts has been occupations that are currently very high in demand in the UK labour market, and they also require quite a lot of digital skills. So those are probably the high digital intensity occupations where there is also a lot of volume. Then there are a number of other occupations that also have a high demand for digital skills, but they are a little bit smaller in terms of volume. So we're not seeing as much demand at the moment, but the demand that there is there has a very high share of digital demand, digital frequency in it. And this includes, for example, occupations such as the design and development engineers, but also company secretaries. So these are two different kind of like occupations in terms of the level perhaps of digital skills that they require, but they both have a high frequency of digital within them. And then the other box I'd like to draw your attention to is the last one on the bottom right, which is a box that captures all occupations in the UK labour market where there is a lot of demand at the moment in terms of job postings, but they don't require a lot of digital skills, or require less than the average digital skills. And in this quadrant, what we find is a lot of people-facing occupations. So we find nurses in here, the care workers, teachers, but also elementary storage occupations, and also some of the solicitors as well in there. And so this is interesting because it helps us start unpacking a little bit more the digital skills concept into the different occupations that are linked to it. And I'm
Elena, can I just jump in here, because I think this chart, as you say, a little complex maybe, but you explained it well, thank you. But it does tell us quite a lot, doesn't it? It's very interesting. Number one, just looking at this myself, it reinforces the fact that there are still digital skills being demanded right across the whole of the labour market. Nothing is at the zero level there. There are no roles that don't require some form of digital skill, which is why it's been highlighted, of course, by the European Union, but is generally seen as foundational, much like numeracy and literacy these days, in that respect, because it is required everywhere. But as you say, there is that differentiator maybe between the people-facing roles and the more specialist roles in terms of the intensity of digital skills. And one imagines that the mix of skills as well, and the connectivity between the digital skills and the other skills that are required. And you can imagine in care workers, storage occupations, etc., that connection of digital skills to other attributes is where the digital skills really play the biggest role. But I think if we can use this as not just understanding demand, but get a sense of maybe hint towards what the current where the current workforce is at, one would imagine that if skills are being demanded in such a way, you would find fewer digital skills per se amongst people employed in some of these roles, like care workers and like elementary storage occupations. And so it does hint towards the challenge in terms of labour mobility, the ability to take your skills into other, perhaps higher value as well as higher demand parts of the labour market. Higher value in wage terms, not necessarily in impact terms, I should add. So there's that kind of gap to fill that I think is a big concern. But also, as we hear plenty about the drive for automation in the labour market and the general digitalisation of the labour market, well, as innovations come into some of these fields, like the care space, of course, that's probably going to drive a slightly different profile of demand, where frontline workers are maybe going to interact with technology ever more so to help us meet growing needs and different needs around tight, where we have tight labour markets, etc. So it also paints a picture of where the risk lies in the economy and what might change the most as well. Do you have any thoughts on any of those points at all that can illuminate that?
I think super interesting. Two things came to my mind while you were talking about this. One is, it'd be interesting to drill down deeper into the type of digital skills that are being most in demand in different roles, because you can see the different, different occupations having a different digital profile. There could be occupations where the digital skills that you require are skills that link to administrative tasks. Other could be more related around the running of tools, running on machines, and others instead being about running the machine rather than overseeing it. So there's different type of digital skills. And then on the automation point, I think is a really interesting one, especially because from what we are seeing that's happening in the labor market, it's not much a matter of like robots taking over and taking our jobs, but it's rather is the need that we have to develop our own digital skills so that we are able to maximize the efficiencies of these robots, to make sure that we can be more productive and deliver more value in the jobs that we are doing. So really interesting to see, do more analysis on that as well.
Yeah, no, great, thanks. And of course, we've dived into the UK as an example. Of course, the interesting thing will be to see how similar roles might look slightly different in different countries based on norms and ways of working and policy, social policy, particularly if we're thinking about sort of the care and education end of the market, which is often driven by government direction, funding, and sentiments there as much as just natural market forces in terms of the labour market at a global level. So yeah, I think obviously what we're doing here, and Eleanor, thank you so much for sharing some of these early insights, is kind of hinting towards where we need to get well beyond the headlines and diving into the substance behind them, because it's really the detail that starts to actually give us the clues that turn into the recommendations and the actions that we might need to take. Because of course what we can see generally is a need for ever more digital skills, but that's not particularly helpful comment to make, really, is it? Because of all the reasons as you described, that well, what specific skills and how do they fit in the role itself, and how is that role changing, and is there even demand for those roles anymore, as opposed to thinking about investment in digital skills development to help people move through the labor market to roles that are maybe in higher demand, as an example. So thank you, Eleanor. Do you have anything else to add on the data points that you've shared today?
No, just keep your eyes open for more stuff to come, because there's a lot more that we're doing that would be very exciting to share.
Absolutely, yes. So there's plenty more coming, folks, as we dive into these topics and bring ever more data to the past, the sorts of data that I hope we're encouraging you to want to dive into in your own situation, in your own setting, because we're presenting a general picture, and of course how you and your organization might interact with that will drive the next level of analysis, the questions you might ask of this kind of data. And our goal on this webinar, amongst other things, is to kind of inspire you to think about those questions that you're asking and how we might bring data like this to it. So thank you so much for the showcase, and as you say, Elena, we will be diving into more through our blog, through future webinars, etc. So let me just maybe kind of review a couple of the key points and reflect on some of those aspects that you had rightly raised as you shared some of the findings. And really, I suppose I'd summarize this in two different ways. Thinking about skills really as the building block of work, how work happens. It's, as you mentioned up front, skills is a generic term that is bandied around quite a lot these days. What does it actually mean? And as we've talked about here, we're trying to bring a common language and a definition and a description to it, so that we can start to break tasks and roles down to help make that connection between the supply of skills and the abilities of the workforce and the skills that employers are seeking here. And of course, job adverts are one of the richest ways in which we can dive into a lot of that. But we need to bring that structure to allow us to turn a lot of interesting but quite noisy information and data into useful, truly actionable insight there. And as you mentioned, Eleanor, we have millions of data points that we are mining every day. That gives us a fantastically rich source. It gives us a significant sample size that allows us to avoid being distracted by an individual posting and think about the groups of roles, activities that a collection of postings can help us better illuminate there. So foundational, certainly, to how the world of work actually works. But the flip side of that is it's a very complex world. As we described, we categorize over 30,000 skills. That's evolving over time as our community engages with those and helps us look for more skills that are most pertinent to them in the labour market, but also as we see new skills emerging in the data that we are working with as well. So that continues to evolve and grow as a resource as things go forward. And really, I think the biggest takeaway from today's data walkthrough was that, yes, it's interesting to see those headlines, but we really do need to dig into the detail. There's significant variation amongst labour markets within different countries, within different regions, across countries as well, and different localities, but within different roles within those contexts as well. And so obviously the layering in that detail of skills becomes even more complex and complicated. And so a recommendation from us is really don't just look at the headlines. We need to drill down and look to the details within and understand the mix of skills available in the labour market, as well as driving the demand and how we make that connection there in a common language to connect the two. I think the interesting thing from seeing some of the examples that you shared, Eleanor, what we can see is, yes, there are unique skills to different settings. We saw quite a different skills profile even within different countries or the same kind of skills categories. But there are also some common foundational skills that we do see in most places. And so the challenge, I think, in evolving our labour market is to work out what the most common denominators are that mass skill development can leverage versus the more unique, the more specialized skills, and how we make sure that we develop those within segments of the labour market as well. And so a big part of what we're doing as an organization, of course, is empowering your experts in your segment of the labour market to really get the information that allows you to look at the commonalities as well as the specialization and have the right context to drive that forward. So hopefully a good number of you are already diving into that kind of data and becoming ever more experts, and sessions like this can continue to help sharpen that. But if this is new to you, we'd love to talk some more and share examples of how you might be able to bring this to your own opportunities in the labour market and the communities that you serve there. And if you want to learn more about some of what we talked about, Eleanor mentioned it earlier, but you can access the Lightcast open skills infrastructure, skills.lightcast.io. There you'll be able to check out the whole library, so you can dive around those 30,000 skill terms and look at those. We have a free to access API that is the library itself. So if you want to start to interact with that in a more automated way using those digital skills, then please do access that. There are also a number of different tools that showcase how that language can be used in key activities, whether that be just diving through the library and looking at the skill hierarchy that was mentioned, or whether that's thinking about how you can run information through documents like a job posting or a resume to start to see what skills are being mentioned. There are some good little free tools there to have a play with that can then be scaled using our commercial services if you think they meet your needs. So have a little play with that for sure. And also, as we talked a lot about European labour market insights, this is a massive agenda for us this year, has been for the last year or so, but it's coming to fruition now as we bring more of those insights to more of the European coverage that we have. And so if you want to start to have a play with some of our data for a number of the European countries, then head to europeinsights.lightcast.io. You can dive in and start to explore some of the in-demand occupations, but also unlock by registering. It's all free, but register, you can start to dive into key skills, wage demands, and other information. And as we continue to develop and broaden that data, you'll start to see more there. So sign up to that and start to have a little bit of play if this is new to you or you want to explore the European labour market settings. And then we have a couple of other webinars coming up soon. So on Valentine's Day, Tuesday, 14th of February, there is a webinar related to some of the UK further education activity, and particularly around governance and the role that labour market data can support the Ofsted activity there. And we will also be diving in much to the similar themes that we've been talking about in March to really unpick the green economy and start to dive into that. So Eleanor, I know you're an architect of some of the work that's supporting this. Don't know if you wanted to just say a couple of quick words to orient people if they might find that interesting.
Yeah, I think it's a really exciting opportunity to hear more about how we can capture the green labour market in different areas, especially here in the UK, and is work that we will be doing in conjunction with WPI and the Data City, bringing together the expertise of all the 3 different organizations to provide insights on the green economy, which is something that is very high up on the agenda.
Awesome. So that should be very interesting. And as I say, over the coming weeks, months, and the rest of this year, we'll be sharing a lot more in relation to the European Year of Skills, but not just consigned to Europe and the EU, looking right across the globe. So keep an eye on our blog site and our website as we go. And we will, of course, be notifying you of upcoming webinars and research releases as well, which we hope you find interesting. So I need to bring this one to a close now. So thank you very much for joining us. If anything that you saw today prompted any further thoughts or you'd like to just learn a bit more about how you can run similar types of analysis for your organization, then please do head to the website, contact us via the contact form, and we would be delighted to get back to you and talk some more. And of course, as I say, keep an eye on our blog and our webinars page for future activities. But for now, I just want to say a massive thank you to Eleanor for contributing the content and sharing your wisdom with us. And thank you, Debbie, for hosting us as always and ensuring that this show goes on the road. Have a great day, everyone.